Welcome to the Ed Club Gathering session, Inclusive Teaching Practices That Keep Learners First, led by Dr. Carrie Orange-Jones and Dr. Denise Furlong. This relates to their brand new book, Learners First, Purpose and Practicality in Your Early Years of Teaching. They are both Jersey educators, so happy to have Jersey in the house here as a New Yorker myself. Dr. Denise Furlong is an assistant professor and director of advanced programs for reading specialists and ESL for Georgian Court University. Dr. Carrie Orange-Jones is a middle school assistant principal and adjunct professor at Montclair University and William Patterson University. And without further ado, welcome to you both and looking forward to your session.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So, good morning, everyone. Chris forgot to mention I'm also a fellow with the Educator Collaborative. So,
oh my goodness, yes. And Carrie is a fellow and longtime collaborator. How could I forget that? In my nerves, I did. So very happy to have you here. Yes.
It's all good. It's all good. So I've done a couple of these before, so it's good to be back, and it's good to be here with Denise for the very first time. So I'm excited about doing this workshop with you, inclusive teaching practices that keep learners first.
You know, when we saw the gathering theme, we said, you know, this is kind of fits in exactly with what we've been doing. So that learners first, that's been the umbrella through which all of our work has been. So I wanted to introduce my shero, my Carrie, my Dr. Carrie, who we met long ago while she was doing her dissertation for Rutgers University. So go RU, rah, rah. Middle school assistant principal, and she works as an adjunct professor at a number of the different local universities, and also the Ed Collab Fellow. She and I kind of combine our educational years to be over 50 years, which is almost impossible because we're both still 29. And she proudly is part of the Drew Writing Project and the National Writing Project. So just always an honor to share space with Dr. Carrie.
Thank you, Denise. And I would like to introduce Dr. Denise. She's an assistant professor and director of advanced programs at for reading specialists in ESL for Georgian Court University. Like Denise stated, we met, my God, years ago. I finished my dissertation in 2018. So I met Denise at the beginning of 2018 when I did my data collection, and she was one of the people that I interviewed, and we just bonded, we clicked. Denise is someone who is a strong advocate for all students, specifically MLs. I admired her work. I admired her passion, her willingness to want to connect with the students by any means necessary. And we maintained like a sisterhood. We created a sisterhood, and we decided to collaborate together. And our gift to the world is Learners First, Purpose and Practicality in the Early Years of Teaching. It's kind of like our love letter to novice educators, but it's also a book that veteran educators can use themselves. And I think in keeping with the theme of for students, this was, like Denise stated, the perfect opportunity for us to present our work and discuss things with you through the lens of for students. And some of the things that we're going to discuss, our book is like 10 chapters long, but given that we have 30 minutes, we want to just give you a tasting of some of the things that we address in the book that is directed towards students, for students. And I know that with Ed Collab, we do a lot of things with literacy. So a lot of this can connect with literacy, but beyond literacy. And we're talking about the whole child and their experiences in the classrooms. We speak about literacy. Literacy takes place in all classrooms anyway. So some of the topics that we will be discussing and connecting to our students through the equity lens, the literacy lens, the dangers of a deficit mindset, which is pretty much what it talks about. I actually co-authored an article with Chris and another fellow, Elizabeth, and we talked about the dangers of deficit mindset and deficit speech, grading and assessment, creating a classroom inclusive classroom environment, access and inclusion, ALs and MLs, and dynamic and responsive learning. So those are some of the things that we're going to talk about this morning. Denise, if you want to jump in real quick before I move on to the next slide.
So Dr. Carey and I kind of both bring our different areas of expertise. So you're going to find we're going to be like flip-flopping back and forth and also sitting in on each other's slides.
Yes. So I'm going to get started with the next slide and then discuss the dangers of a deficit mindset. So where did this concept come from? We all know about COVID. In 2020, we were all isolated in our homes. And I think that when we started to go back to the classrooms, everybody started talking about this idea of learning loss, that students lost the learning. And I remember having conversations with Chris and Elizabeth about that concept, that idea of learning loss. And I used to equate it to, I used to always use the bicycle story, right? Like I haven't been on a bicycle in years. I ride a stationary bike, but when you think about riding a bike, if I got on a bike right now, I may be rusty. I didn't forget how to ride the bike, but the learning needed to be reactivated. So it's the same thing with students, reactivating learning and trying to reach students where they are, but using positive speech as opposed to negative speech. And it's something that I try to do in my own personal life as well. I try to, especially as I've gotten older, to be more positive in my thinking and positive in how I address students. I'm a school administrator now. And I remember at back to school night and even at the orientations with our new students, I always talk about, I made a mistake. And I used to say that to my own students in the classroom. There's no such thing as mistakes, there's learning opportunities. The mistake occurs when you keep doing the same negative behaviors over and over and over again. So you don't make a mistake. It's just an opportunity for learning. It's an opportunity for teachers to teach. Imagine if we as a unit, as educators, started to lean in that direction. If we started using more asset-based language in the classroom as opposed to deficit speech. And again, deficit speech often targets marginalized groups, is always, students of a lower SES or BIPOC students. Let's focus on their strengths and their gifts. Let's focus on the things that students want to do. And, it could be so many things that you can do with students to bring out the positivity for them. So some examples, and there's more in our book that we wrote, like these kids are low-level learners, as opposed to saying in an asset-based way, these students are developing their skills, or she can't read. She is learning to read and she's building on her strategies. They don't care about school. They are motivated by different interests and experiences. We can connect learning to those. And even taking out the word they. Scholars are motivated by different interests, because when you say they, I know when I hear the word they or those kids, I can be triggered. So just imagine how the students might feel. And I was fortunate enough to be in a classroom yesterday, and then I'm going to move on because I don't want to overtalk. The teacher's name is Jen Bloom. I don't know if Jen is on, but hey, Jen, I was in her classroom yesterday. She was teaching writing, and she was going over having the students rewrite the work. And as opposed to telling the students that this is not good, or she said to the students simply enough that you did not adhere to the guidelines. So let's take time to go back and reread and revise. Everything about that is positive, as opposed to saying, oh, this is wrong, this is incorrect, or you didn't do it right. Jen framed it in a way that was positive, and the students willing to go and correct and revise and revamp so they can improve their writing. So, think about moving forward, moving away from deficit speech and asset-based speech, and seeing how that improves the learning environment for our students.
And just to pop in there, Cindy mentioned in the chat about like we should be thinking about asset speech for teachers. And I'm even going to add families. So what about our, families that might not come to educational events or functions? Oh, they don't care. maybe they're just trying to stay afloat. So
Yeah.
considering, like our students' families are hardworking, our students' families care, our students' families are doing the very best they can.
Yeah.
So considering that. So one of my favorite things, access and inclusion. So we talk about a little bit, the how and the what. How could we, differentiate our instruction, our access to the school community, the different events? How could we, like, the feelings of belonging? Think, Dr. Eileen Winokur's work. We have a Padlet that we're going to share with you that has a ton of resources and links and connections. What could we do for our learners with diverse needs? Notice that we don't say diverse learners. We say learners with diverse needs because that's pretty much everybody. How could we challenge, and how could we provide scaffolds and supports? Doing everything in context is important, and it's important not only for our learners with diverse needs. It's important to kind of keep the learning meaningful and authentic. Mm-hmm. And starting with the goal in mind, absolutely. So yes, we're going to talk a little bit about assessments and grades and stuff like that. And obviously that is a goal for a lot of our students and their families. But what is the goal in terms of language objectives? What is the goal in terms of cultural and content objectives? Thinking about that. This last one is the most important. There's no guests. There is no student who is a guest in a room, and there is no teacher who is a guest in the room. Your students, perhaps your students with IEPs, perhaps your multilingual learners, they should not be sitting in the back corner because it's convenient. So we need to make sure that we are not geographically marginalizing anyone based on where they are, either in the school, in the building, or in the classroom.
All right. I love that, geographically marginalizing.
Yes, no thank you, ma'am.
All right. So grading and assessments, this is another passion of mine. I was an alternate route teacher. So I know how I was tested as a child, but I remember like coming alternate route and everybody's always talking about differentiation of instruction. So like, if we're differentiating instruction, how come we're not differentiating assessment, especially at the state level? So in doing so, I tried to create assessment for students that was fun and that gave them choice. I found that when I used to give the students choice, they would be heavily immersed. So you have the students who are artists. Can you do a mural? I had students who were very social. So I used to do podcasts. I used to have students create graphic novels using Pixton. I had students create books using Book Creator. Giving students choice, it gives them agency. It addresses their learning styles. And in doing so, also in a roundabout way, can prepare students for standardized assessment. I don't want to get into the politics of standardized assessment. I just know I'm not a personal fan of it. However, in giving kids choice, you can embed those skills that they need for standardized assessment into those activities, help the students create rubrics that are equitable across the board. So if I gave students choice, I'm like, you did a graphic novel or a book or a podcast, as long as you touch upon this point, and this point, and you access the learning, or you're able to show me that you've learned the content, then that was enough for me. So I would give the students a survey always at the beginning of class, when I would meet them in September, and ask them about, what do you like? What kind of music do you like? What kind of foods do you like? Well, how do you like to learn? Making those connections with students. And then when they tell me how they like to learn, then I would say to them, well, how do you like to be assessed on your learning? Let's talk about what that means to you. What does assessment mean? How do you feel when you take a test? What can I do as an educator to create an assessment that will make you comfortable telling me what you've learned? And it was important, and the students will be some of the examples that I have. I wish I could share with you, but I do know that we have a Padlet, and I'll be sure to include some of those pieces of work, some of those examples. Actually did something for the Ed Collab a couple of gatherings ago also. So I'll see if I can access that for you and upload it on the Padlet so you can see some of the examples that we had set forth. I'm gonna go on to the next slide for Denise.
That's perfect. And yeah, like, this kind of goes right into what Carrie was saying. And also in the chat, we're saying choice is imperative. So if we're working with strengths, that's where our students are going to be motivated. That's where they're going to really be engaged and really be taking chances. And that's the thing, is that, like, I know that we used to talk about multiple intelligences and we don't really talk about that much anymore, but I do feel that strengths would be like, rather than I'm a visual learner, well, maybe I have preferences, maybe I have places or modalities where I feel a little bit stronger. So thinking about that and thinking about the choice boards that we could even engage our students in with the rubrics. And even in graduate school, I say to my students, here's the rubric. However you want to present that information to me, I don't care. Show me how your brain works, because I think that that's awesome. Healing centered engagement. We're kind of moving away from trauma centered teaching or pedagogy, and we're focused on how could we as a school community and as a classroom really build our students up and have them work in ways that really empower them. So let's do that. Again, on the Padlet, we have the transformative emotional intelligence. Links to that. Super important work and really very connective to the healing-centered engagement. And, like we're talking about, working with strengths in the modalities of language, the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. You could also be thinking about like kinesthetic and how you really engage them in different ways. And we're still learners, as I'm sure everybody, watching this considers themselves to be.
Moving to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about creating an inclusive classroom environment, which is very important to me. I literally just did a new teacher orientation workshop on this topic. Like, who are your students in your classroom? This all connects back to, when I stated prior, like, how do you like to learn and how do you like to be assessed? All these things come in because, again, this the topic is for students. The classroom is for students, but it's also for teachers, because the students that give us the information to assist us with teaching them so we can bring out the very best in them. And in doing so, it increases our sense of efficacy, our sense of self-efficacy as educators, connected to the success of students. And how do you want the students to be successful? How do you access that information? Again, I used to do a survey, and some of the things I would ask them is like, where are you from? What is your cultural and ethnic background? Because who doesn't like to talk about their family? Who doesn't like to talk about where they're from? And that's how you connect with students. The languages that they speak. So in case you need to help them, if you have MLs in your classroom, how can you reach them? How can you better assist them? That's where graphic novels came into play for me, because you would use the pictures in the graphic novels to decode and make sense of the text. Talk about the celebrations and their learning styles. Kids can tell you, they can really vocalize how best they learn. They're a captive audience. They don't choose the pedagogy. They don't choose the scope and sequence. And they really don't even choose the assessment. But you as the educator can help tailor the assessments and the learning to suit their particular needs. And that's where their talents and gifts come in. Let them tell you what their challenges are. The socioeconomic status of the students is really important, because you need to assist them with access. Fortunately, in our district, a lot of our students, we have one-to-one computers. However, if they don't have Wi-Fi, that's something that you need to know so you can help them make the connection. So all these is really important in helping the students be successful, but it'll also help you to be successful too, because who doesn't connect the students' success to themselves? I know, I'm like, if my kids are successful, that means I'm successful. And it's not always just about grades. It's about creating connections, and the kids will remember you long after they've moved on with their life.
I think we could stay on this slide for a minute, if you don't mind. And because I think we're doing okay on time. But so I know where I used to teach in Central Jersey, they included in the new teacher orientation, they gave the new teachers a tour of the town.
We do too. We
and
do.
I love that.
Yes.
And you kind of like it kind of puts it in perspective. Oh, this is where some of our students live, or this is where, teaching high school, this is where a bunch of them are working now. And you go in and you engage with not only like the historical aspects of the town, but you engage with the community in a really positive way.
Yes. Finding out where they come from. That's really important. In one town.
Going in and out of the stores and going in and out, and really, why don't we want our educators to, number one, be knowledgeable about the community in which they teach, which you may have grown up in that community, but I'm going to tell you right now, as an educator, you're seeing it through a different lens. So getting to know them, and you know what, providing a chance for the community to get to know the educators on a positive level, because let's face it, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of feelings about educators right now.
Yes.
And why don't we create those positive connections?
Yes.
Those same people might be the people who are hiring your students. Those same people might be the people who are providing the different supports for the families. And well, why don't I stop by where, I say the immigrant affairs or the YMCA or things like that, because those might be the people that, when we need people to come in and speak to our students for career day, for potential, Read Across America, things like that, those might be the people that come in and support our students.
Right.
So important. All right. You want to talk about MLs?
Let's go.
Rock on with our MLs. So in New Jersey, we have made the switch from ELs, English language learners or English learners, to multilingual learners. And I know that across the country, many of our states are also making that switch. Again, to talk about asset-based, vocabulary.
Yes.
If I'm talking about a label for a student, I'm talking about a label just in the fact of giving me information. Not that that's something that they're going to carry with them like a rock on their shoulder for the rest of their lives. It's just something that'll give me information. And multilingual learners, let's face it, some of our students might be on their third or fourth language by the time they get to us. And they're learning more than just English. So super important. A lot of times translating might be the way that teachers, that might be their go-to in terms of like providing access. And I'm not saying never to translate, because sometimes it's appropriate. Say, for instance, if a student might have literacy in other languages, leveraging those languages, awesome. But shouldn't necessarily be the go-to. I always think, okay, is this going to be something that builds schema or background knowledge in a content area? Then yes, let's do a little translating. Translanguaging is, I don't know if you see, I'm like so happy to even talk about that. Carrie, she can kind of tease me about that. Translanguaging is super exciting, and it's really been a movement that people have been embracing. When I was a language learner back in the mid to late 1900s, it was kind of considered to be code switching, and it was considered to be lazy language learning. Now, translanguaging is much more than code switching, but on the surface, it would be that you're kind of going back and forth among the languages in your head. And really to embrace that and empower our students in translanguaging, even if we don't know all of their languages, something super, super important to do. And then buddy system, we need bilingual buddies, awesome, but we need buddies that do not share languages with our multilingual learners. We need to kind of provide those pathways for them to connect with people that they might be other multilingual learners. They might be native English speakers. They might be anybody. But that kind of like fostering those senses of belonging that we talk about, again, like checking the Padlet, it will lead to those leadership opportunities. We want to see our MLs on student council, on peer leadership. We want to see them captains of the sports teams. That's how you're going to take the temperature of any school in terms of their inclusion. How well are their various, I don't know, subgroups of students like integrated into leadership? Super important. Carly Spina, one of my other heroes, she has a new book that talks a lot about language oppression. Are you saying we only speak English here? Or are you saying, I don't understand you, so you cannot speak your language? I have even been in the hallway where people have said, oh, we speak English here. Wait a second.
Yes,
No, thank you. So, and then also just thinking, our students have come to us learning their whole lives.
Yep.
So some of our students may have had gaps or interruptions in formal education. That doesn't mean that they have not been learning their whole lives. And we really want to build them up and kind of acknowledge that.
So I think the bottom line too, I think the common thread, because it's like in our book, we have these different chapters. And again, like we stated, it's for students. Everything that we've written, everything, the directions that we're going in, are sharing with teachers and educators. It's about advocacy. And I remember saying 2 weeks ago when I did this presentation, we have to check our biases at the door. As educators, we have to check our biases at the door. Everything that we've written in our book is about advocating for our students. And I said to my novice educators in my district, if you can't advocate for the students, one, maybe you should reconsider what it is that you're doing, or two, find a person or persons or systems or everything that's set up in place for our students to succeed. And that's okay if you identify that this isn't my bag. Right now, I believe when Chris came up with this theme, it's in light of everything that's going on in the world right now, right here in our own country. And I don't want to make a political statement or anything of that nature. My statement is we have to remember our children. We can't forget our histories. We can't forget her stories. We need to make sure that all the voices are heard of our students in our classroom, the inclusive environment, assisting our MLs, helping them with assessment, providing them with asset-based speech so they can feel valued and valuable. And if you walk into the classroom and you're standing in front of your young charges, your young scholars, your young learners, and hey, I don't want to teach this, or hey, I don't want to address this, or hey, my belief systems is that I don't want to discuss this with students. That's okay. But what you have to do, what you must do, your call to action is to be an advocate. And being an advocate is connected to being an effective educator. And if you identify, if you know that you can't serve the students the way they deserve to be served, then you need to either step back and maybe think about something else, or two, find that person that will help the students. I always tell people, an example is I am pro LGBTQ, and I have in my office, I am a safe space. And you can come to me and talk to me about anything. And I've said to people, if you can't do it, I can. So just send them to me. And I think that what this is all about today is for students. And being for students is being an advocate. So soapbox, stepping off of it.
If you're not an advocate today, you could learn to become one.
That's it. So our last slide has all the information. There's the link to the Padlet, which was dropped. There's a plethora of information there for you to be that advocate. And, some information about our book, Learners First, Purpose and Practicality in Your Early Teaching, Veteran Teachers. It's for everyone. It's our love letter to educators everywhere. There's a lot of resources on the Padlet that Denise put together, our contact information, and thank you for the opportunity to share our voices with you. And Denise, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, just thank you. I'm so grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you both so very much. I'll actually leave this on the screen as I'm saying our goodbyes. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Carrie, for this power-packed half hour of thinking very carefully and closely about our students, and especially around the language and the ways that we as adults come and prepare spaces for our students. I love all of the ways that you're helping us think about asset-based instruction and making our schools places that kids want to be and adults want to be there too. So thank you both, and thank you both for your book as well. The link to the Padlet is in the description of this YouTube video. This video will be archived after this live presentation, so you can go find that link and follow up. And please do make sure you get a copy. I have my copy of Learners First. Thank you all very much. And please remember to pay the joy forward. If you were inspired by this session, please go to gathering.theedclub.com/charity and consider donating to our charities of the day. Thank you all very much. The next session's coming up right now. Have a great rest of your gathering.